Okay, here we are again. Hi, Tobias.
Markus, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. So I think I have to let you start in this one.
Fine.
Well, I listened to Earth Moving yesterday, and I remembered all the things I remember. But anyway, you already surprised me before we started recording with a bit of information that I had no idea about. So you go ahead, please.
Sure. I mean, when you announced or said last time that one could call Earth Moving a shitty album, I knew that we were going to have a good discussion today. Yes, I mean, Earth Moving is probably, for many people, their least favorite Oldfield album until the late 90s. And even then, I think most people kind of have a stronger dislike for this one. We'll get into why that is, and I also have some theories about why the album is the way it is. I think, yes, as an introduction, one thing I can probably already pronounce at this point is that no one listening to this episode, and probably none of us two, will go out of it thinking, oh, I was totally surprised by this discussion. Earth Moving is really a totally surprising avant-garde masterpiece. There's some there's some stuff in there I never knew. I don't think that is going to happen. It is what it is.
I think with this album, it's more about the things that didn't happen.
Yes, probably. Very likely.
Yeah, and like the first thing that comes to mind is just such a short album. To me, that is like the most, dissatisfying aspect of it, that it feels like it's not complete.
Funnily enough, I always thought cut 2 songs from it and then you have a better album.
That's true. That's true as well. But that's what I mean. It's like in either direction, it's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's a whole piece of work.
I wanted to maybe, as a sort of a thought experiment, frame the debate around this album with a very short anecdote from my personal past and how to approach this. I got a lot of my musical education from the local library in The Hague, which had a really, really good assortment of CDs and LPs. I got Amarok there on vinyl, and I believe I said that before, and I got Islands there very early on. And I got a lot of the electronic stuff that I listened to at the time from that library. And there was always one album which I sort of had my eye on for a long time, which you actually had to pay to rent the CD. So I was limited in terms of what I would take home with me. But there was an album by Vangelis called Invisible Barriers. So this is an album which he recorded in the 80s on Deutsche Grammophon. So the only album he did on Deutsche Grammophon. And I was always curious about it because it only had 3 tracks, one of them very long. And the cover was intriguing. It was a heat image of 2 people. I was always fascinated. And so I took it home, and I had known Vangelis through his super melodic later 80s and 90s work. And then I borrowed this, and really it opens with what sounds like him hitting random pieces of percussion, which are then sort of triggering electronic effects. It sounds a bit like stones being struck together. And then there's another piece which is just long held, sustained electronic tones. And the final piece is an electroacoustic experiment. And at the time, I was totally unprepared for this, and I thought, what is this? And I really did not take to it. I mean, I thought it was unlistenable. Now, I've totally changed my mind on it. I've come around, but the thing is, I never for 1 second thought it was bad. I just thought I'm not ready for this. And I think I always had a deep respect for an artist who had by this time actually had a really successful career in pop, because he came from Aphrodite's Child and had been super successful, and who had written beautiful melodies. To come up with something like this, I had a huge respect. And what strikes me with Earth Moving is that if an artist takes the opposite direction, so he comes from something that is really, really deeply felt and very complex and challenging, which I think all of his first 4 albums are, and then lots of stuff which he had recorded in the early 80s is really challenging and innovating and forces you as a listener to constantly keep up. If an artist then records something like Earth Moving, it's automatically treated as though it's an effort of pleasing commercial interests. I think if you approach this album from the way he approached it, which is experimenting in trying to write a pop song, then I think it opens up more. I think this is not so much maybe for our debate, but I have read a lot of comments, and I think it's just maybe the wrong audience. I think maybe the album should not have come out this way under his own name. Maybe it should, but I think as a listener, I think you have to let go of all your expectations. You have to. This is very different from anything else he's done.
The interesting thing to me is that now that I've spent some time with it again, it feels like something that started out as an ambitious project that then kind of like turned into this.
Could be, yeah.
Because there are several things here. So first of all, like the other vocal album he did is Men on the Rocks. And with Men on the Rocks, which was 25 years later or something like that, or
I'm trying to calculate.
27 years later.
Yeah.
We have demos. There are demos on there which are almost like the real song with Mike singing. So with this album here, we don't really know where he took how he came up with these songs. And so what I'm thinking is that the production, which is like mostly electronic, and it actually says like recorded with an Atari ST 1024, that maybe these could be actual demos, that the backing tracks that he worked on these songs, maybe not on guitar or something, but he came up with them in the sequencer software, and that maybe the plan was to kind of like blow them up a little more into more acoustic songs, which in some places happens a little bit on the record.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't know.
That is interesting because I tend, now you put it that way, I think I agree with that. That makes a lot of sense. It explains, I mean, the drum programming on this album is one of the notable features, I think. It's pretty good. I think on Holy, for example, it's pretty amazing, actually. In the chorus, I think, I actually, before, when I was listening to it back in the days, I didn't notice it was a drum machine. It's more notable on other occasions, but it's a very, very unadventurous approach of working with the drums. It's very, like, if you think on QE2, he has a drum machine doing things like an early drum machine, very primitive one, doing things that only a drum machine can do. And he closes the decade where technology has advanced a lot beyond that, programming drums in a way that you do no longer notice it's a drum machine doing things that a human drummer could do a lot better. Then why would he do that? I don't get it. So that makes it, if you put it that way, maybe these are demos, then that would explain why he didn't just call.
Obviously, the released pieces are not demos anymore, but I think a lot of elements of the writing process are probably in the final product. That's how I see it. That's how I understand it. And I think, like, so Mike was always experimenting, right? We know that a lot. So what is this experiment here about? I don't think that what we are hearing is what the intended experiment was. So this album has two or 2.5 different styles on it, I would say. And one that I have to mention first is R&B. So he was trying to make an R&B record. He has R&B singers on the record.
Horns.
But R&B also, including, like, because in the thank yous, the singers that were singing but didn't make it onto the record are actually mentioned. and there are like, you know, like more
Yeah.
R&B artists there even than are actually featured on the record. So, and sorry, R&B and rock music. So then he has like what's his name? Chris Thompson,
Yeah.
right? Manfred Man's Earth Band. And then there is like a little bit of that synth pop thing that he kind of did with Innocent, that song with Anita Hegeland singing,
Yeah.
which is like the 0.5 stylistic diversion. And there is the Maggie Riley song, which is sort of like another kind of like way to look at something like Moonlight Shadow. And that's about it, right? Like in a way, Far Country and Holy and blah blah could also be kind of like seen as sort of a crossover R&B rock kind of thing. Anyway, so that what I'm trying to say is, I think that because, and like I wasn't aware of these. So Daniel Lazarus was involved in one of Donald Fagen's albums,
Yeah.
for example, and I think like the team he seems to try to have put together are pointing to a completely different record than what actually came out of it. And
Yes.
again, like I don't know much, but I'm thinking there must have been like an ambitious idea, which somehow got, cut short.
Could very well be, yes. I so my idea after spending time reading about it was that if you look at interviews with Anita Hegeland and him from the time, they look extremely happy together. I mean, these interviews are usually very often bad, and they tend towards the sort of the glossy page 3 newspapers. And he deals with them, I think, in a way that he's much more patient with the interviewers, and they actually work. And so my take on it is that this idea of him doing something against his will on this album, I don't believe in that, because he actually almost everything here is done by him, and the entire performances, he's producing it. And I think he mentioned in one of the interviews that he doesn't know what will happen after the contract with Virgin runs out. Maybe he will start producing others. So I always thought this was sort of a business card, the album. It has him producing almost everything, including the drums. So that's sort of so like the idea is close to what you're saying, but why would he leave them in? And my idea was, okay, he leaves them in just so he can show how good he is at doing this. And he's there as a backing singer. There's lots of like, it sounds very much of One Piece, which was very different from Islands. So he has sort of, but he shows different styles, and he presents himself as a producer. I just thought
that's a good idea, but then why didn't he do it just on his own without Daniel Lazarus as producer?
Yes, I don't.
And also, as a matter of fact, I say fact because I read Phil Spalding write about these sessions. And Phil said was that he and Mike worked a lot together in the studio on this record, which in the liner notes is not really represented. There's only one track, Earth Moving, I think, in which Phil Spalding is actually credited with playing fretless bass. I don't really hear any other acoustic or electric bass on the other tracks. I'm not sure really, but it's true that there's fretless bass on Earth Moving, also on the disco version. We're going to talk about that later. And Phil Spalding is credited as a backing vocalist on a lot of tracks here. So not as a producer, not as somebody creatively working with them, but Phil said that.
Yeah.
And I'm just putting that on the table as it was also like around this time or a little bit later that like in my conversation with Ant Glynn, he mentioned that there was like an incident between Mike, Anita, and Phil. Whatever that was, I don't know exactly, right? So something seems to be like on the verge of changing here. And so like there's one other super important thing. On this album, he starts using and discovering the new sound world, guitar sounds that he then later used and only dropped 10 years later or something. So he's kind of like discovering something here, and it's the first time that the PRS guitar is listed, which is, you could say, just like a Les Paul variation with more sonic possibilities, but still at the same time he started using new gear. I can't remember the Boss GP, I think it's GP5 or GP8 or something it's called, and he has these wah-wah sounds and these really futuristic sounding sounds, which you could first hear on this album. Obviously, a lot of those on Amarok, also on the Sally Oldfield album, which was called Natasha, under the name Natasha Oldfield, I think.
Yeah, a little bit later, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little bit later, but that was the sound world that kind of like first appeared there, and it's funny to hear that within the context of these compositions, which draw from a sound world like the mostly synthetic synthesizer-based thing, which he's never hasn't really done since then or ever before. Even Islands was maybe pointing at that a little bit, but this is just so different. And also like the compositions, like especially the rock compositions, he's completely let go of his trademark compositional style, where he's writing polyphonically, where he's writing parts that move in opposite directions. And this is very much like a straight trying to be, or kind of also achieving it, trying to be more simple, where the parts move in parallel and things like that. He would, like as a composer, he would never do that. So it was really like restricting himself to a certain less sophisticated style of arranging and writing and orchestrating.
There is very little time between the recording sessions to Earth Moving and those to Amarok. It
seems to be, to me, it feels like it must have been the same time, almost.
Yes, he recorded this one in 9 months, and then at the end of, so the album comes out in 1989, and then at the end of the summer, I think, he starts recording specifically, well, it's singled out as Amarok sessions.
Is it the end of 1989, the release? I do not remember, because I think it says 1st of January.
Yeah, the album comes out in early 1989.
Yeah.
The sessions to Amarok, officially, like what is labeled the Amarok sessions, is at the end of summer, I think.
I see.
There's very, very little time between it.
I see.
And to me, the guitars in Hostage, I think that's one of these sounds you mentioned, they look like almost a quote, which then comes up in Amarok.
Yes.
And then the sampling, we have like first hints of sampling with the intro to Hostage, and then this preacher speech in Runaway Son.
Yes. Yes.
So yes, looks like there is a connection there.
So like saying it again, like this seems to be like initially more ambitious than what it feels like now looking at the tracks, or even back then I felt like it was really a strange record. So, which is not a bad thing for something to be a strange record, but even back then it didn't really fit into the sound world that people were using. I happened to listen to an Elton John record from that time yesterday, for example, which is really much worse. Like I have to say, like much worse in terms of production and writing and everything. Yeah.
Yes.
But still, this record, when I say it's better than that, it still doesn't fit in.
No, I looked it up with like 1989 in the United States, #1 albums were Madonna's Like a Prayer and Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation. To me, I mean, it doesn't have a dated sound. So, for example, Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation, that has a sound which you can actually really pinpoint to the late 80s. But to me, it does sound more fresh. I mean, it's not an effort to be up to date, that's for sure. And maybe about the production idea, you mentioned Lazarus, who is a great producer, and he's done so diverse stuff. So working with Mike Oldfield would fit into his portfolio because he'd worked with Jar, as we both know, on Zuluk, but he's also worked with really big commercial names as well. But we don't actually know what he did on the album. He actually plays on a few tracks, but I just wonder what.
Yeah, tambourine and harmonica or something.
Yes, and
right?
I think he does background vocals on 1 or 2 tracks as well. It's
and the horn arrangements are by Mike and Daniel.
I just wonder what his involvement was. We'll have to talk to him to find
Yeah,
out.
we should really talk to him. Yeah, it's what I was gonna say. So the
Sorry,
ambition, seems to be super ambitious. Look at the lists of singers that didn't make it on the record. So that's so first of all, Danny Thompson. Like I was surprised that Danny Thompson is a primarily bass player, but multi-instrumentalist. At this point, he must be almost 90 years old, I think. Like that really points to something completely different, like a double bass player, like not on the record, right? So Bertus Redding is a singer who was like born in the early 1930s or something, rhythm and blues singer. Incredible. I don't know her. I haven't listened to her stuff, but still. Then there's Roger Chapman, right?
Again.
So looking back at that, Ian Gillan.
Ian Gillan was
How bizarre. And Fish,
yeah.
right? So Fish is also another person that we could talk to about this session. Find out what Beverly Brown. I researched her, also an R&B singer, actually spelled incorrectly here in the liner notes. Gareth Snook, I don't know who that is. It's very, very interesting to see. Like I think that the scope, the initial scope of this must have been something different.
I just wonder, even from a commercial perspective, I don't think that this album, anyone who would listen to this album once it was done would have said this is a hit album. I don't think so for a second. Whereas if he had actually worked with, if he had taken like someone like Tony Levin on bass, Simon on drums, and Andrew like Ballou on guitar and vocals, and he would have put a band together, I think that project would have sold much more than this one did.
But you know what? Well, some of you may know that I'm friends with Adrian Ballou. I played music with him. So I asked Adrian about this session, and Adrian, I remember him saying 2 things. He said, Holy is still the biggest piece he's ever sung on. Biggest as in most sales. And I was shocked. He said it's like factor 10 or like more than the success that he had. And for Mike Oldfield, it's like it's nothing.
No.
Right. So it's like it's really interesting. And Adrian also said that they invited him to the sessions, and he wasn't supposed to sing Holy. And someone said, and this is like where Mike and Adrian are very similar, somebody must have said to Adrian, oh, you can't sing that song, it's too high for your voice.
But he sings it perfectly.
Yeah, and then he said, I'm going to show you. And he did, and that's how he ended up singing Holy.
I also loved that he actually said about the album that he was, because people don't get why is he on this track. Like, why is someone like him on this track? And he said he was thrilled to be on it. It was the first time anyone asked him to sing on the track. Everyone booked him for weird guitar sounds. And that's mostly what he did. I think with a very few exceptions, like he was on Paul Simon's Graceland. So that wasn't that weird, but a lot of the stuff
But it was a weird guitar. That was the intro to whatever you can call me Al or something.
Yeah, exactly. But most of the stuff he did was really, and he had a solo album out before, which is completely insane. If you want to spend a night with weird dreams, then you should really look that one up. It's from 1986, and I thought, and he said it was great. He loved it. Yeah. It was wonderful, and he actually he did a Facebook post later on about his moment on German national TV, lip syncing "Holy" to Peter's Pop Shop or something.
Yes.
And
I remember seeing that live. I was, yeah. Yeah, you know, and everything like this, the kind of like that's what I'm saying when I'm saying it's like a more ambitious project. Mike got really his favorite people involved, right? So, and I think favorite like not much is known about Mike's musical taste or like even his involvement when with musical scenes. I got some insight talking with Aunt Glynn, where Aunt Glynn was saying that Mike was very much interested in AC/DC and like this. So really, I would say Mike is a music lover. There's no other way really, and Mike mentioned in some interview, he mentioned In the Court of the Crimson King as one of his favorite records, and King Crimson, and then like the Discipline, like the Discipline, Three of a Perfect Pair beat albums. They were very important to him, and he later on for Tubular Bells 2, he asked Robert Fripp to join, and here he asked Adrian Belew, and I think that's why we can sort of assume that at least some of the names, some of the singers that made it onto the record or that were tried out for the record, he must have really liked or appreciated, let's say, appreciated their artistry. And if that, you know, if those voices or those artistic contributions are represented in a good way, I would say I doubt that, really, like with some exceptions, yeah. But I think it's a very ambitious thing, and I wish that this would be like if there's any one of his projects that he could have redone, this is the one.
he was supposedly, he said he was satisfied with it. So this on several occasions. I wonder if, and maybe that fits in with this idea, he was definitely working on different ideas at the time. He was thinking about Tubular Bells. He was thinking about what would become Amarok. He was
And
thinking,
Tubular Bells too, yeah.
and Tubular Bells, yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
And this one, so I wonder maybe if at some point he just split the whole thing for himself into this one, which he may have thought is a commercial project, and what would become Amarok. I think Heaven's Open actually, though, although it shares a few ideas with Amarok, I think that's completely separate. That's its own thing.
I agree.
But this one, it could have been like that because in Changeling, there's again not a lot about this album, but I find it revealing that he at first says he did the album for Virgin, but then says yes, but actually the relationships with Virgin were not bad at the time. I had a really good connection with the European part of World Virgin, and then he played Amarok to Richard Branson, and supposedly he loved it. He said it's great.
Yeah.
Let's make this Tubular Bells too. Which
Yes.
would have been interesting if he had actually done that. I think that's something to ponder. So I don't believe that the record company was the one pushing this. I think maybe for himself, he just, as you maybe said, there was something here, and maybe the ambitious thing was too ambitious, and it didn't fit. Maybe he just split it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. And also like it's an interesting, yeah, I mean the splitting is that makes total sense. Because like you see like his interest probably already was with doing more of the instrumental stuff, and kind of the wind chimes already points to that he was very much interested into that sort of collage of ideas again, and then he did that side of songs, and in a way this is sort of like an afterthought or like a continuation of that mode of working. Also, he was in a new situation with family, right? With eventually, did they have 2 or 3
Yeah,
kids?
well, 2 for sure. I
Yeah,
don't know if 3.
yeah, 2, I think. And then, Greta and Noah, I think. other kids that were born around that time. And yeah, so I'm saying like the songwriting and like Innocent is about that girl, Reuter, I think. And so in a way, it maybe was just like a different just overall environment that this sort of like started, where this music started appearing.
I definitely like, for many people, I think they see the Amarok as slightly dark. I don't think so, but I've read that. And this one is so genuinely written by someone who seems to be happy.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because-
Like I would also say that like the lyrics, which are
Yes,
seems like they were written by Mike,
yes,
are kind of like interesting, you know? Like
Yes.
they're so generic.
but they're also personal. They're both.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes, they are generic. Maybe that's, but I think, well, if you look at the titles, Bridge to Paradise, Nothing But Love, Holy, it's not, you wouldn't expect like a doomy, gloomy set of pieces, and they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like the interesting thing is that the track order here is just really puzzling me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. It's just it's of the kind that I have a hard time remembering the order. So it's sort of as if it is designed to be confusing. I don't know how to say it.
Would it, in my mind, I would probably cut the final track of each side, and then I can sort of see a pattern more clearly. I think the ending tracks of both sides feel added on.
What is the end
Well,
of
bridged.
the first for the first song?
Runaway Son.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that's not a personal favorite. Maybe that's one of the reasons I'd cut it. But I see why the album opens with Holy, and then you keep sort of the momentum with Hostage. Then you go for the ballad, and that's the third one. And then the fourth one is Innocent. Then you have a sort of a catchy one again. But then I can't see why you would put Runaway Son, which is somewhere in between. And the same is the end, like the end of the B side, Nothing But Love. That's a beautiful piece to close the album with. But then you add Bridge to Paradise, which is also stylistically sort of a deviation from what came before.
Like I have not studied these pieces as much as I have studied Mike's other pieces. So I have not really sat down and figured out the chord sequence and stuff like that. However, now like having listened to Nothing But and Bridge to Paradise again, like these weirdness that they're presented as one track with just one track marker on the CD is
also
so
on the LP,
awkward.
by the way.
Yes, okay.
It's also on the LP.
Okay, interesting. I think that probably, going back to what I said, that is R&B and rock mostly, that probably some of these songs were produced in both styles.
Yes.
And that's Earth Moving. What is called Earth Moving, the disco version, is actually the rock version.
Yeah.
And then the Earth Moving that's on the record is the R&B version. And Nothing But and Bridge to Paradise may actually have similarities in the chord structure. I think, I haven't checked.
Yeah.
And could be also like two versions of the same idea.
Or coming back to your idea that this was more ambitious, maybe at some point they were supposed to be one piece.
Of course.
With a sort of a sieg between them.
Yeah.
I believe in, I mean, like if you're looking for the record company to be the bad guy here, then you would say they just pasted them together so they could have an 8-minute track on the track listing. But I don't believe that.
No, they don't. No,
That doesn't
they
make
wouldn't
sense.
care. They wouldn't care about that.
And so maybe, I mean, I always think of in the 90s there was this band called Filter, and their second album was a pretty big at the time, and it was called Title of Record. That was the name.
Yeah.
And so it actually, I believe, the way this came to be is that the artwork was finished and the band simply hadn't decided on the title yet. So the graphic designer had the layout saying Title of Record where the title was supposed to be inserted. And that's how it was at some point just sent off to the printers. And the band hadn't had weighed in again. And I don't know, it could either be a simple mistake, that there was a version where these two were maybe one, and then they were separated. And then on the other hand, I don't have the LP. From what I've heard is that there is actually, you can see a separation between the tracks on the pressed LP. So
I mean, it is two separate songs. Very clearly, there's a gap and everything. So. Yeah,
you would call that.
But I'm just thinking that because I said, okay, we don't know if there are any demos, right?
Yeah.
But for Earth Moving, we know for a fact that there are two very different versions. So that's why I'm thinking. So maybe there's a relationship between Nothing But and Bridge to Paradise that is within the musical material.
Yeah.
And that could be easily figured out by just transcribing.
He said that he made different versions of the tracks. He actually says he recorded 5 or 6. He records 5 or 6 different takes of his tracks, and then just puts one of them on the album.
Yes.
Actually, Innocent to me sounds like the remix of something that would have been different.
But like the Innocent has an official remix, like both a 12-inch and 7-inch version.
I don't know that one, actually.
I know it. It's by Bob Kraushaar.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really a less elegant version, like with worse beats.
Even
really,
worse beats?
Yeah, well, even worse. I think that the actual sounds pretty smooth and flowing, and has some sort of like forward motion, where the remix, Bob Kraushaar remix, sounds really like stompy and with a very loud cowbell and stuff like that. It's really it's not good. Yeah, and I don't know, like that was the time when people were going for remix as sort of a commercial thing, so that you would buy it or that it would get played in the discotheque or something. Like it's really I think like the album version of Innocent is far superior to the remix. I mean, Innocent is an interesting, like, again, compositionally we can say there's not much new or nothing much happening on this record. It's also not entirely true. So like the licks and the motifs, like the guitar motif, like Innocent being like so keyboard heavy, this version, but actually the guitar is playing the main melodic riff, or the little 4-bar interlude, and it's very beautiful. It has this octave jump on the guitar with like these arpeggios, and it's a fantastic little creative pearl, you could say. And some of the songs have like these. What I found interesting, for example, is that Blue Night, right? The solo in Blue Night is one that references the style he's used on Discovery.
Yeah.
Like really strange. Like this is something like I would not have expected, like that kind of acoustic guitar solo. Interesting.
It comes out of the blue. Sorry.
It comes out of the blue, totally. And there are some awkward kind of like bridge sections in this record, and a lot of pieces in
awkward or interesting.
Awkward.
Interesting.
Interesting. Like they're interesting, but they're also kind of awkward. Like in a way, harmonically interesting or kind of like quirky.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like not executed in the way that he would normally execute these ideas. Where I was saying like about parallel movement of things, which is happening a lot in this record, which normally he wouldn't do. Like what? Let me think. So like Holy has this.
That arrangement is anyway very interesting.
It's quirky, and then we have like I'm saying harmonically. Then actually, Runaway Sun has like some
Yeah.
unexpected chords, let's say.
Where is this weird bass, this quirky bass run? Is that in Runaway Sun or is it on Bridge to Paradise? The really fast one. That's also fits in with your idea. Maybe he was doing a jazz record in his mind.
Yeah, or yeah, more rhythm and blues record. Yeah, like Blue Night has this strange harmonic stuff going on. Yeah, I mean, how do we want to continue talking about?
Well, we could of course go into the tracks, especially if we want to look at the lyrics. Then it makes sense to go through it track by track. There is, I mean, when we joked last time that when we think there's not a lot to say about the album, it usually ends up being a very long episode. Based on the music, I think this one is going to be hard because, with the exception of the things you mentioned, there is not. I mean, those are sort of, then you notice these things because they are rare, because they stick out, because they are now embedded into a sort of very strictly schematized, formulaic verse, chorus, bridge, and sort of arrangement. That's why they stick out so much. Whereas on Discovery, the whole structure of the song was really interesting and really weird sometimes.
Yeah, the one more thing I want to add about versions that we know exist.
Yeah.
I know that there was I can't remember, it was Nicky Campbell radio show or something where there were some alternative versions of the songs, and there's actually an alternate mix of Earth Moving, and I mean of the album version, where the saxophone solo actually was the guitar solo. And it's beautiful. Yeah, I much prefer it. The mix is also like slightly different. You can hear more of the intricate details of the guitar, rhythm guitar part. It's very nice. Then there's a very slightly different version of Innocent, just slightly different mix. No other parts as far as I understand. And then Far Country, there's a version or maybe even two versions of Far Country. And I'm not exactly, I know for sure that there's one where the guitar solo is maybe just Mike. There's Adrian's part is not there. And or I mean, obviously I can always be wrong with everything I'm saying here. We're just putting out thoughts, right? And maybe there's even a version of Far Country with a different singer, but I don't know. Like the album version is sung by Mark Williamson.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the one that Fish also auditioned for.
For Far Country, wow.
I believe, yeah.
Interesting.
I wonder where Ian Gillan sang for. I don't think we.
Yeah, probably See the Light or something. See the Light.
That would make sense, but I don't think it was that way. Well, okay, I really.
Yeah, I don't know, and we also don't know which song Adrian Blue was supposed to sing.
No, we don't. Maybe it's one which didn't end up being on the album.
Yes, yeah.
Because that's the way it actually sounds. The way from the comment I read by him. I mean, still before maybe diving into the songs. I mean, in a way, maybe he approached it as a singer's album. You know, there's this album by Jean-Michel Jarre called is it called Voice? Now can't remember. Anyway, maybe he was thinking about as a singer's album.
Yeah.
So if you approach it from that angle, that's maybe the reason why he tried so many singers, because and the arrangements follow the voice maybe in a way. I mean, he clearly loves these big expressive voices. Actually, when he starts, he's always said, I'm not a singer. But then he just takes a few vocal lessons for Heavens Open, and then he is actually putting down an incredible performance. But he clearly likes, I mean, he seems to have a love for the American R&B and rock singing. I mean, on some of these tracks, the voices feel somewhat.
I think it's part of the process of him opening up, where like initially with Maggie Riley, he did the opposite.
Yes.
So she was an R&B singer, and he turned her back into the folk singer, and those were the songs that were successful. Also here on this record, like Maggie is singing not in the most expressive R&B style that she can sing in, right? So, but yes, you're right. I think there's another perspective here. So we're not just stylistically stretching out, but also stretching out by allowing these expressive voices. Like Bonnie Tyler on Islands is actually one step in that direction for sure. Roger Chapman on Crisis, right? And
also, I think really with title track Earth Moving, I have to say that I mentioned this before. I'm not the guy who likes these big rock voices necessarily, but I think this is really a great example for a track that gets elevated to an entirely new level through the performance of the singer. I think this is like she's obviously a fantastic singer now, great vocal coach, Nikki Bentley. But I mean, really, this, I think when I listen to that track, when she reaches the chorus, it suddenly, everything lifts. And I don't know, I think she's singing and it moves me. And that's exactly, like there's no difference between what she's singing and the effect it has. I think it really, her taking it to somewhere I would have never expected.
And that's actually a characteristic of Mike Oldfield's performance. Like on guitar, he does exactly that. So you can have a piece playing and he starts playing and the whole thing gets elevated.
That's true.
And yes, I have never thought about it that way. It's interesting. And like it's a matter, like the voices obviously are pretty much a matter of taste. And also like voices are also products of their time, right? Where like a certain style of singing, like say Rod Stewart or something, clearly worked very, very well late 60s, 70s, 80s. And then there was a little bit of a drop off, like, you know, and some of like even like Roger Chapman, if you don't have rock music anymore or blues, other than in the circles where people go and see shows, right? Obviously, that's where you. But in popular music, this was already at the time where the electronic music was starting to take over, and we can see that in the music here itself. But then mixing that with, like I say, like those big voices, the R&B, the rock, is sort of very interesting. It's kind of bound to fail. But still, it's an amazing experiment.
It's also weird, for example, so maybe one thing to add to the vocal thing is that in the title track, there is sort of, you get hints at what could become a guitar solo at the end. But it doesn't lift off. So I think he's consciously or on purpose he's giving way to the voice. He's letting the voice soar. And the guitar comes in at the end to add to it. But
I mean, on the whole record, we have 2 guitar solos, right? I think we have Blue Night.
And then Far Country, which is...
Far Country, of course. So it's 3, but also we have the Bridge to Paradise solo, which is actually an outrageous solo. It's and reminiscent of stuff he did on Amarok, actually. This very fast triplet-y thing. And Omadon, actually, it's that origin of, and I remember playing Bridge to Paradise to a guitarist friend at the time, and he was also a Mike Oldfield fan, but he hadn't heard this album yet. And I played that solo to him, and I said, "Any idea who that is?" And he said, "No, Van Halen." Eddie Van Halen. Like, interesting. Like there was. Anyway, that was just a little excursion there. Do you want to go through the songs or?
Well, we could use it as sort of a guideline. Because Holy is a good point to start, because I actually think that Adrian Belew, if I had to choose one singer, if he had gone with one singer for the whole project, I think Adrian Belew would have been a fantastic choice. I think his performance here is great, because his voice has more of a softer touch to it, but he actually has enough oomph to give it that power, and I think it works great. Other than that, I think Holy has a really interesting arrangement where you actually start off with 2 really cool verses, and then after that it's sort of chorus, really weird bridge, solo, and then it keeps
there's
building.
a solo as well here. Sorry, I forgot. So I'm the guitar solo.
Guitar solo.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I got it wrong. Yeah, I really love the first two lines of the holy lyric.
Yeah,
Like the fact of having the order of the words out of whack for the English sentence. And your smile, I see, is great.
this is just, I mean, yeah,
I just love it. And with Adrian's voice, it's just incredible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Again, what is the album called? Yeah, Desired Caught by the Tail.
Yeah,
That's the one. I mean, that if you compare that to this, it's insane.
Yes. Hmm.
Um,
Actually, there's the album Here by Adrian Belew, which was released in 92? I can't remember. Which is, for me, one of his best albums, with songs, like very straightforward songs. Great, great record. And sort of like I somehow see this music also influence Adrian's music a little bit, where Adrian is mostly Beatles inspired, right? Like he's a huge Beatles fan.
but they also sort of like Everly Brothers were obviously really the classic.
Yes, yes. But Adrian is really like, say, 98% Beatles. You know, like at the camp that we do together in August every year, there's a campfire on Thursday nights where like there are like 130 people around the campfire singing Beatles songs with Adrian leading. It's incredible. So anyway, yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, and also so this is an interview he did around the time, maybe actually the album you mentioned, actually a little bit later, and he came. It's interesting. He started as a drummer, I believe, as sort of like he used the song and then a drummer, and the guitar came later. So and he not only did he like the Beatles, but he apparently also really like avant-garde side like Stravinsky. So I'm pretty sure that there were interesting overlaps in their tastes. And actually, their guitar solos on what's it called? Far
Country.
Far Country.
Yeah.
They, if you listen to it on a stereo without headphones, it melts, like it blends really beautifully. If you wouldn't know, didn't pay attention, you'd probably see it as one person playing it. They complement each other really well.
Yeah, totally. Like I say, I think it's we don't know much about Mike's personality as a social person with other musicians. Like there's like whenever you hear something, it's something that sounds like negative, right? But I don't think that you can. Well, this is the one thing that, and maybe I mentioned that before. I asked Robert Fripp, like, have you met Mike Oldfield and what do you think? And Robert Fripp said he was extremely nice, he's a great person, and that I shouldn't believe what other people say. That's what Robert Fripp said to me. It's the truth that Robert Fripp said that. And I'm still wondering why he would have to say something like that. It's really interesting. So anyway, like we don't know anything about that, but I see there's like an interest in music, there's an interest in expanding. And getting Adrian Belew on Holy is beautiful. So then, like another thing we haven't actually mentioned his name, Max Bacon, who sings Hostage. Like so now we get this is the connection to Islands, which like there's Anita Hegeland obviously, but like, and this Max Bacon to me is a strange choice of singer, really.
As I said, I believe he likes you said rock or AC/DC. I mean, yeah, I agree. It's not my, but I mean, the song is probably, it fits the song in a way, but it has a lot of pathos. It's just very theatrical. And I can see how it fits in with like a new wave British heavy metal sort of track. But I know it's a bit off on this album. Yes, and Hostage. I don't know if you want to want to talk about Max for more, but with Hostage, I find the lyrics interesting because it starts off with a German radio broadcast sample, and there's this suggestion that title refers to the Gladbach hostage situation from the time.
Yeah.
I don't believe for a second that the song is about that, though. So I don't quite see that connection. If you read the lyrics, I don't think that is true. There's also a suggestion that Runaway Son, I believe, is about Mike Tyson or inspired by Mike Tyson. That's another one
I don't know anything about that. I remember that Mike was actually referenced in a German interview in a German newspaper or magazine. He was referencing the kidnapping situation as being an influence. I'm not saying for the lyrics, but I don't know. What is this really about? I think like these songs, when he's talking about like the being stuck or hostage, he's talking about the record company most of the time, and about relationships. I think it's very, very simple, and
No, I agree. I think this one is very, like you mentioned, that's slightly generic. This one definitely, like if you read it, this sounds a bit generic. This one.
yeah, there's nothing obviously relating to biographical data in these sons. It's very.
This one is sort of the exception, actually. I think many of the other ones feel like if it really was a happy situation, like at home for him, which it seems to have been at least for a long time, then these could be seen as love songs to that person and situation.
I mean, like maybe it's also referring to some sort of mental health issues, even in something generic as this. This is like the only thing like that I can think that maybe this idea of being sort of like silenced. You can't speak. That is something that is very much, I think, for me personally, pointing to some sort of mental health issue.
Yes,
when you're losing your voice, But anyway, like this is just.
If you at one point have the time, maybe it would be really interesting in the background to I think the second verse. There is stuff going on the synthesizer because we haven't mentioned it. I don't think there are very obvious Tubular Bells references on this album, but there could be here. And there's the bells on the title track in the end where he's actually striking the Tubular Bells very softly. If you listen on headphones.
On Earth Moving.
On Earth Moving. Yes.
Yeah. But actually, there's a very, very big reference to Bridge to Paradise.
I thought so, but I wasn't. Maybe it's the way he's playing it. Oh, okay.
That's it. Yeah, and it just repeats over and over again.
So then there are a few. The Tubular Bells are on the title track, and there's something in the background really, really quietly. But maybe I'm over analyzing it.
Probably we're analyzing everything here.
That's true. The over-analyzing podcast.
But like having said, okay, Holy has some really good lines, lyrics. Far Country is also nice.
Yes.
She takes the rain and turns it to sun is beautiful. Just very simple, but.
I actually this one, Far Country, it's written like it's a Bible verse. It has the structure. She takes the rain, turns it to sun, and my soul she feels it. It sounds like straight from the Bible. So I actually had a look, and so there is Isaiah 43 says, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." That's straight from the Bible. And then later on, where says it, "My storm she stills it." And that's Psalm 107 is he made the storm be still and the waves of the sea were hushed. So that's, I think it has to have a Bible reference. It seems to be.
Yeah.
It's also interesting. This is so positive. This idea of someone taking the pain and taking the rain. There's a song by R.E.M. "I'll Take the Rain," which is almost the exact opposite, where where you have the same metaphor. Someone taking the rain, but if you read the lyrics, it's really dark, and it seems to almost suggest I'd rather take being in a positive place, like in a in a dark place alone than in a good place with this person. So it's almost the exact opposite. And here it's that picture of taking the rain. Someone taking the rain is so, this is real relief and
Yeah.
joy.
I just had a thought that maybe, and this would be quite romantic and moving, this song could actually be about Anita Hegeland.
I thought so.
Because, where does it say this? Yeah, yeah, she breathes the air from a far country,
Yeah,
of course. But this bond survives.
yeah.
Interesting. Like you see, like it's good to talk about these things because I didn't have that association at all. It makes total sense.
Do you want to talk about this sort of duo guitar solo, which I think it's a beautiful solo. I also, yeah.
It is beautiful. It's really, it says right side solo guitar Mike Oldfield, left side Adrian Belew, so that you can tell them apart. Because it's interesting, I think that Mike actually learned something from, I mean, like not necessarily here, but he kind of, there's a certain expressiveness to Adrian's playing, also an experimental expressiveness, let's say. And Mike is kind of like doing that here as well with the wah-wah and the whammy bar. You know, it's something that Mike really just only started using here with the PRS guitar, even though obviously on the Strat, like he had that option, but he was using it more like a for fast vibrato, you know. And here it's more as an expressive device. I like it. I like it a lot. It could be it's much too short. Like this is something that could go on for a couple minutes and would be beautiful. But yeah, very expressive, very fluid, very emotional, very beautiful. Kind of like the track again, like Far Country, because it sounds so. The sounds used are so generically of that time. It's really. I mean, sonically, it does sound good. It is a good sounding record. I would even say the whole thing. It's a good sounding record, but it's a little bit like nowadays, like putting an AI image up of something that, and that's sort of like if this was played by real players, by real musicians, this song would have been stunning.
I agree. And there's an album by Leonard Cohen, which is also underproduced. And I think the idea was at the time, maybe it's even called 10 Songs or something. There's one of his later ones where he actually, he keeps it that simple. And the idea was to be able to focus more on the lyrics, so it wouldn't detract.
Yeah.
But this one, I think this is sort of a wasted opportunity, because I actually think that this is one of his most beautiful melodies, if you think about it. It's really, really lyrical, and it would work instrumentally as well. It's one of those where you could, I think, just play it with an instrument and it would really work. So that could have been a great, big instrumental piece. And the vocal arrangement, I actually think when it goes into the harmonies is really great. But it's weighed down just a little bit by the I don't know, the unformulated or overformulated arrangement. It's somehow
It's very. This is what I mean. Like, this is like what the demos were like, and you would then have them parts replaced by real instruments, which didn't happen on some of these. Hey, there's something else I just remembered about Hostage. There's this strange moment where the word ashes is pitched up in the vocal. It's the very last line. Riding on the road to ashes, and it's an electronic effect. It's not that. I don't think that he's singing like that, Max Bacon. And also like that has Bobby Valentino on violin. Like on Hostage, I forgot him. And he's Ann Dudley's brother. Isn't that interesting? So like there's the connection to Trevor Horn there already.
The plot thickens.
Yeah, plot thickens. You know, I find these things interesting. Like, and why have a violin there suddenly? You know,
that was also weird. Yeah,
it is weird, but it's also kind of cool.
It's cool.
Yeah.
By the way, the Trevor Horn connection was there, of course, a bit through Yes and
For
I
sure,
suppose.
for sure.
But yes,
Okay, do you want to
Innocent.
move to Innocent? Yeah.
I think this is one where I think they could have written the lyrics together, maybe. Hard to say. With this one, I think the production is an issue because I think the drums work against the song. I mean, the drums on the entire record are badly produced in the sense that they're too high. They cut through the mix very sharply. They take away from the music. And this one, I think it's actually the way it must have probably taken him a very long time to program these drums, the way they're done. But I don't think they work very well. But I don't have an issue with the lyrics, which many people have, because it's what's the line? Speak to me like the very first speak. But it's a song about and to a baby. So I think I don't have an issue with these lyrics being baby talk because that's what they are. I think they're baby talk.
Yes.
And I think actually if you read the lyrics, I think they're very moving. I think it's a very direct, from the heart observation, like you're innocent, laugh to me like the very first laugh. And what's the second line? Holding me, you in my hands or something. I think that's...
My hands hold you and you adore.
Yeah. I mean, that is so straight, so direct.
Your body moves in perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
When you're a parent, you recognize that, but it's not just a cliche. It's actually very real.
It's very honest, very real. I totally agree.
I wonder if this song, why they chose to turn it into this danceable synth pop song, and rather than doing it as a lullaby. Because I think it's a great piece. Like if you
know that he had Molly on QE2 and Ora Bidu on 5 Miles Out, and probably others pieces that we don't know were actually written for his children.
Yeah.
And Innocent is, to me, I have no objection towards this song at all, I have to say.
I like it.
I think it has a cool riff, cool licks. The lyrics are cool. It has a cool vibe. It is sort of has a nice speed to it, let's say. I don't object the drums on this, the program is so much on this, because I know the other version, which I really don't like. So it's all relative. And like the most beautiful line here is, cow jumps over the moon now, which is probably just directly related to something that the child either said or played with a toy or something like that.
That could be.
And yeah, it's just beautiful.
That one also has a sort of a off the time video clip, but I think that video clip actually works.
There are two, right? I think, or are there not two completely different ones? I think, or maybe that was Heaven's Open. I'm not sure. Yeah, kind of like everything kind of worked. Okay, so your favorite, Runaway Son now?
My favorite, exactly. Well, I don't think there's much to say. I just think that I think, as you said, the seeing, the sequencing of the pieces is questionable, and with this one, to me, I've said before, I'm not a big fan of the songs on islands, and this feels like an island song in some respects. I don't have an issue with the album at all. I like the album, this one, and this one is not one of the ones which I feel drawn to. I can't even say that much about it particularly. As I said, I think it's, I read somewhere it was supposed to be some kind of inspired by Mike Tyson's life story. I don't know Mike Tyson's story enough.
Where did you hear that?
I read it on a forum discussion, but it was mentioned twice. And also there's these samples in there which are from a sermon by Aretha Franklin's father. That's where I think the samples are taken from.
Okay.
It's an interesting one in that sense that I don't quite know what it deals with. Musically, I just don't find it that particularly intriguing.
But anyway, like and this is interesting, like where we were saying last time about islands, that there is some religious themes
Yes.
come through, and you're absolutely right with Far Country and also Runaway Sun. Seems like
Yeah.
there's some, but then there's like this, and this is a word I haven't used yet, gospel. The idea of gospel, which
Yes.
again made a reappearance on A Man on the Rocks.
Yes.
You know. Anyway, like it's kind of strange, this song. Yeah. Yeah, I wish that at some point there would be we could get some insight into why this happened, right? The interesting thing about the kick horns that the brass section you use here is that the way they play is super tight. Like this is fascinating. Like in this electronic music context, to have the brass playing so tightly, and
Yes.
we already have them. No, not already. We also have them. I mean, in which other song are they on?
You know, the funny thing, I think they're not on another song, and I think you're thinking of Hostage, and I think on Hostage is actually a synth. That's what I don't get. So he has, and that's sometimes why I think it's sort of a producer's business card, this album.
Yeah, I thought it was on Hostage. You're right.
So on Hostage, so he has a brass section, which is great, which, as you say, they can play pretty tight. But on Hostage, he doesn't use it. And on Runaway Sun, he makes them play as though they were a synth. And he cuts them and edits them so sharply that you don't actually get the live feeling of it anymore, almost. That's weird to me.
Yes, yes. Hey, by the way, on Hostage, I see that Daniel Lazarus is, and I've never seen this before, credited as playing clavinet.
Ah.
So not clarinet, clavinet. Interesting. Sorry, that was, yeah. You know, I really thought, no, the kick horn section is also on See the Light.
Ah.
But I don't remember hearing it in there.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You know what? So Chris Thompson is singing both Runaway Sun and See the Light, and they are next to each other in the sequence. I always thought that was strange, awkward, to have the same singer in a row on this kind of record with, you know, all sorts of different singers. So but See the Light to me is a really cool song.
I agree.
It's just so stripped down, and it's so groovy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it really has like that very, very heavy kind of what heavy music actually would sound like to me, that kind of groove. And amazing rhythm guitar playing, which Mike unfortunately hasn't done enough in his career. Just amazing guitar sounds. And
I like this one because it's sort of the same. He goes in a similar direction as on Crises' Shadow on the Wall, but rather than going for the big chorus, he keeps repeating it, going over the same ideas, and then release it in sort of an atmospheric coda. It's, I think, sort of an understatement, which is completely surprising, but to me it really works. Especially you can actually crank this one still a little bit, and if you listen to it loud, I think it really, really works.
So I mean, this somehow I see this song as referring to the changes that happened in Europe with the wall coming down, and like it seems to, but there is like these couple lines here that I really don't understand, or I would like to understand. The most precious thing I possess is knowing the answers. Yes, right.
I thought the most precious thing I possess is knowing the answer. Yes.
Yeah, but it says the answers. Yes, and so, but anyway, like that's what, and soon my liberty will be reality. So that obviously like could then refer back to the changes in world politics at the time, or personal.
The end of his record contract with Liberty.
Yes, and just like and this is like something else that we already talked about, that Mike must have had a sureness about what he was doing, and a sureness of his vision, and like if that's really like the reference that is the most precious, that he was aware about that as being a precious thing. Anyway, like we're going crazy here with this, but it's
That one, by the way, I also think has a guitar solo cut short. That is another one which could, at the end.
oh yeah, it's beautiful. It's just so simple again, but so expressive, and yeah, but that clearly is like a choice to not turn it into
Yes.
a regular guitar solo. It's more like he's playing the melody,
Yeah.
which I like very much.
By the way, the song is called See the Light, and Chris Thompson is singing, and he was famous for his Manfred Mann's Earth Band song Blinded by the Light. I don't know if that sort of thing.
And did you know that Chris Thompson wrote one of the biggest hits of that time, The Voice?
Ah, no, I didn't.
He wrote that song, The Voice, and there's his version and there's John Farnham's version. John Farnham's version is the big hit. I think John Farnham is or was an Australian rock singer with a big voice.
Yeah.
But actually, Chris Thompson wrote that song.
Wow, I didn't know.
Yep. So like that's also kind of ballsy, like you have like a really successful writer singing your songs on your album, and you can see that Mike kind of like was in a position to do that thing, and people liked him as a creative force, and they were open to contribute to an experimental record like this.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately we have to say it's an experimental record. It's not experimental, but it is an experiment.
Exactly. I think sometimes it would have been interesting if he'd actually allowed for like someone like that to actually influence the writing process. In my mind, I thought a bit about what could he have produced if he had gone for like the big choruses, or had been able to write these big choruses. And I had the idea of something like Alice Cooper's Poison. That's I think roughly the same time, and that's something he could have maybe written with someone else, and that would have been something like this, but taken to a more commercial level. I don't know.
I have another association here, which is Mike and the Mechanics, Mike Rutherford at that time, with Paul Carrack singing.
Yes.
I sort of like get that vibe.
Yeah.
That there's this sort of like relation or influence there.
Yeah, that's true. The soulful voice and a guitarist writing the tunes, but it's then in an electronic context.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, okay.
Okay, then we have the title track.
As I said, I think to me, there's no doubt that they picked the right one for the album. I always thought that the so-called disco mix is horrible. Doesn't work.
It's a completely different version. It's probably like the rock version that they tried making and abandoned.
It's actually, I mean, the song is also different, right? It's not a one-to-one transition. I think this one...
No, it is. It is the same song, but completely arranged completely differently. The one element that survived, and this is kind of funny, is that fretless bass riff that Phil Spalding is credited for here.
The which one goes through the entire track.
Yes, yeah. But there's one particular moment at which it speaks, right? Yeah, it is. It is an interesting song. I on some level I never connected with it, and on some other level, it's a very moving song. It's strange for me to say that. Like the saxophone solo is that's Ralph Ravenscroft again, just like on Islands. And like I said, I much prefer the version where that same melody. So the solo, the melody has not been changed, but it's just played by a guitar on Mike on guitar. And like here you can see that, like even if you think, okay, there's a musician maybe making a contribution to a part, you realize, oh no, Mike has written it. Yeah. It wasn't really I don't know if that's always the case, but like in these cases that we've so far, unearthed.
Yeah. It means like Woody Allen, if Woody Allen is directing and not playing, then you have actors playing Woody Allen
Yes.
in his own movies. I was wondered by this one why they chose to have Nikki go for that big dramatic voice straight at the very first chorus. To me, it almost feels like it would have been even stronger if she had held back before going into it. It's so big. I mean, it's such a big vocal statement that it almost feels like it's exhausted when she comes to the second time. But I don't know. I still think this is a great piece and vocal performance, like a second to none.
Yes. And I really also like the arrangement of the guitars, like how the guitars interact with that program beat, and like the little sequency bit that goes through the whole song. It is quite special, I have to say. And I like for me, what you're saying about the voice is like the thing that turns me off, right? But you're absolutely right. Like maybe it's just like a choice of like pacing really that would have made this better, like on that level. And before I forget it, right, I want to say something that the cover is kind of cool.
I thought about that cover as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a copy here which is not the original. I remember that the original actually looked quite nice. The typesetting is something that was questionable for the time, but the idea to have photographs from within a fish tank and Mike's face in the tank, in the water, with open eyes, I think that's a very nice idea. And it's reminiscent, and this is strange to say, obviously, of the Almadon cover and also the cover of Discovery.
Yes.
So in a way, it's kind of an interesting thing. I'm trying to see if there's any credit for the artwork here on this. Unfortunately, there isn't. Anyway, like there's something else again on the cover. The credits, it says casting engineer Dennis Blackham, our friend Dennis.
Yes, who I mailed, and he told me that must have been
Yes, mastering engineer actually, not casting engineer. Even though there was casting for the singers, so I don't know why they got that wrong. Anyway, yeah, the cover is sort of interesting. It's for the time it was quite an elaborate job to do this kind of layout. That was just before you were able to do that with computers, so that still must have been done partially, at least, by hand. And with the transparencies here and like these things.
It suggests something else different, I think, from what you're getting again. It suggests something which is more moody. I kind of feel the title track fits with the cover. I don't know. Do you have an idea why he's underwater with this one? Going into the cold water? I don't know. Being submerged.
No, I don't think that is. I think it's just. I think it's just for the visual effect and the colors and the it's kind of psychedelic in a way. It's like the most psychedelic of his covers, and I like the color scheme. I have to say, it's really nice. No, I don't think that there's any. I remember that there are some other photos on the. And we haven't mentioned this wholly. Actually, it was released as a single with remixes and an instrumental version, and those were the versions that Phil Spalding did. Those mixes, and there's a mix which has Phil Spalding's rhythm guitar and bass parts up front. Very different mix, but also worth listening to. And there's a photograph of Mike at that time. When they must have made these photos, but where he's outside, lying on his back on a bench or something like that. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Yes. Yeah, no, I don't see any significance of the submerged phase.
No, me neither.
I don't think so. Like, I mean, how do you illustrate earth moving?
It's interesting that it's called earth moving and then it has water elements.
Yes.
That is,
Yeah. Yeah, the backgrounds and the cover they're all water based.
yeah. And there's no reference to it in the well, I mean, as you said, it could just be visual. It looks,
Yeah.
agree, it looks great.
Yeah. So unfortunately this version doesn't say anything about the photographer.
I don't think there is in the other one either.
Really?
No.
I'm pretty sure that I have read about this and that yeah, we'll find out. Okay. Maybe at some point we need to make bonus episodes to each one
Yeah.
where we list the things that we forgot got wrong or something. Okay, so now Blue Night. Almost getting to the end of the record. Maggie Riley sings this song. Tambourine makes an appearance. Yeah.
And it's sort of a fairy tale lyric. I believe he picked her because of the lyrics. That's I think I read that somewhere, that they thought that she would be able to deliver these lyrics.
Mhm.
This is sort of a lightweight song, which I think works nonetheless. It's not. I don't think it's as good as the other two big singles he did with Maggie.
Mhm.
But it, as a sort of an addition to it, I think I've always liked it.
There was a TV appearance, like a mimed TV appearance of this song where they presented it live. So it must have at some point been considered as a single, but was not released as a single, as far as I know. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like like I said, the guitar playing, especially the solo, makes reference to Discovery, to France and Tricks of the Light or something, that kind of style. But the song itself with the lyric with Queen and blah 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 reference to France, right? I think just a little bit. And the hero, yeah, it's kind of like to me I wouldn't call it. What did you say? Fairy tale lyric or what? Did you
Yeah,
call
I
it?
said
Like it's sort of like a generic kind of, I don't know.
I think it's too much for many people.
And only the Illuminati comes to us a little bit like only true lovers have the magic touch. It's sort of like
But the transition to the acoustic guitar solo is very nice as well. I think this is sort of
yeah,
that again is nice touch.
it's a little like nice little bridge again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But as you before asked, sort of what is the idea behind the title, the track sequencing? I think when you come from something which is really heavy, like Earth Moving, and then you go into this, and then to me, Nothing But is a beautiful way to just close it. Sort of after that emotional climax, you sort of slowly breathe out. That's how I see it. And I always thought Nothing But is another really, really fantastic song.
It's beautiful.
One of really fantastic. And
Yeah.
but again, the arrangement is debatable. But to me, then the album ends, and then you get
But it sort of has the timpani sounds at the end, which is kind of like interesting. The rhythm, which is a simple 4/4, right? I've heard like a friend of mine completely mishear the rhythm. He
Yeah.
was confused, like what's going on here, was counting it and like, is it an 11 or something? No. It's just you're hearing it on the offbeat or something, you know? So he was confused about that. But what both Nothing But and Bridge to Paradise do is something that is not really present that much on the rest of the record, is where the key changes within the song. And that is like a totally an Oldfield thing to do. So somehow these two songs are a little bit more, you could say, than experimental or back to what he would do with like having the harmonic progression evolve, right? So, and that's also what I meant. What is the common theme between those two songs? And that's maybe the reason why you are right. Maybe they were part of the same idea at some point, or meant to be the same song, or a suite of songs or something. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm quiet because I'm looking at the lyrics here.
This is a sort of a similar idea lyrically as in Far Country.
And Carol Canyon singing, beautiful voice.
Yes, fantastic.
Incredible voice, and just this is like where it's R&B.
Yeah.
So of all of the songs, this is the one that is the R&B song, actually. And I also love the additional vocals. The Paul Lee is the name of the guy singing it. Beautiful, like that back and forth between those voices. I love it.
I think in a way I see this, the album as sort of, there's something tragic in the sense that I think if he had not released it, it probably career-wise would have been better for him. You can actually see in his, if you look at Germany, which was a major market for him, the album, I think Adrian Belew actually had it wrong. I think he didn't, that the single wasn't a big hit. He was invited on the basis of the album, which went gold. Germany was the biggest territory at that time. It sold 250,000 in Germany alone, and I would assume, interpolating from that, that it sold 500,000 worldwide, which is still pretty good. Yeah. But you can see every single album after that sold considerably less, spent less time in the charts than this one. I think he sort of, regardless of what the intentions were, the end result was still, a lot of people bought it, but were disillusioned because he went into a direction which they could no longer go with.
Yes.
And so the tragic thing in a way is that some incredible work came after it, and it didn't get, that work didn't get listened to, maybe because of this one. If you look at it just on a track by track basis, to me, I think this has a bigger hit to miss ratio than Islands has on my end. I think Holy is great, Far Country is great, Earth Moving, the track is great, Nothing But. Those are great. And then there's plenty of really, really good songs. And there's very few ones where I would say misses. There's a lot of debatable stuff, taste stuff. But there was a lot of, like, you could argue that many things in the 80s straddle that line and are maybe on the wrong side of that divide. And I think really it's the stylistic choices and putting the way that it's put together maybe results in something that's for no one in particular. But I think it works, but there's something tragic in it that maybe in a way it would have been better not to have released it, or maybe under a different name, or maybe not even his name, and maybe have gone with one singer and then produce it for someone else. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we've made that clear. I mean, just because I just playing the song back in my mind, like Nothing But, for example, like the way that he's playing guitar, like the guitar sound on that song is just so incredibly unique and beautiful.
Yeah,
like there's no other guitarist playing like that. That this is something we need to mention. I think it's important. And the way that he does play these parts is not as solos, but more like this record, like if you were looking at it from the vocal perspective, we have the lead vocals, we have backing vocals, and we have sort of like ad-libs, like ad-libs, which are like a very much R&B thing, right? Like not so much rock thing, maybe a little bit like Pink Floyd, and Dark Side of the Moon, like that's ad-libbing on it, right? But really the way he's starting to play the guitar is he's ad-libbing with the guitar. So sort of like answering the voices with the guitar, and so it's neither a solo nor a full-blown melody, but it's like these little phrases that make their way into his compositions. And and then like talking about this album as sort of like as a failure or partial failure is also kind of bizarre if you think about Amarok that was supposed to come out just like 14 months later.
Yeah.
So it's really like nothing like was or like is ever or was ever lost on him as an artist. I don't think so. And that's why I use the word experiment. Like this is maybe one of his most experimental in that regard, because it was giving him so much room for failure.
Yes.
And failure again is not a good word, because like there's nothing wrong with this. I think
No.
it's just if we're looking at a progression of an artist finding his voice or exploring the possibilities, like for example, like with this whole record, I have no idea really how he came up with these melodies. Like how do you come up with these melodies? They are like so uniquely different, let's say, from other melodies he's written, and then at the same time you can't really imagine anybody else writing this. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like it's
yeah.
really it's
I have to say that Nothing But That really got stuck in my head for a very long time. It came popping up again and again. It really is, it seems super subtle, and many people perceive it as almost too like meaningless almost. But I think these melodies are really, really powerful in their understatement.
I think the verse melody is just incredible. It's like similar to melodies you would find on incantations. Like the context is completely different, yes, but right. So that's almost like the range of the what is called the Song of Hiawatha. It's very interesting. Like, and yeah, I think that's also why we love that song, because it has that melodic complexity. Like where I always with Oldfield, I'm asking myself, like, where does that melody come from? Where? Because it's not that he's using, like most people, they use chord tones and they match somehow match the harmonic progression. But with Mike, there was always something about these elements being not necessarily so closely tied to each other. And when something like that appears in a context like this, kind of like they say cheesy pop record, or like it's kind of mind-boggling, and that's also why I'm saying I do not request him to re-record this, but I'm looking at like a parallel universe where this actually the original ambition kind of would actually that maybe he just would have needed more time for it or whatever, or
I mean,
different collaborators.
One parallel I can draw again with Jean-Michel Jarre is his album Teo et Tea.
Oh yes.
And so that album, looking at it from like for most people that is the absolute
worst. Yes.
And later he had actually said about the album that he was playing around in the studio and he had a couple of people who helped him with the beats, and it was a playful thing, trying out new things as he was maybe rearranging a studio, maybe going for something else. And coming also from a sort of a period where there had been a lull and where he hadn't been doing that much, and it should never have been released. So somehow it had arrived at a point where it was maybe too much to just remain in the vaults, but not enough to be a full album. But it got released, and then it was out there in the open. People treated it like an album, and they thought it was horrible. In a way, maybe Earth Moving is like that. I said maybe it was a business card. Maybe it wasn't a business card. Maybe it was just... You said
maybe it was just business.
Maybe it was just business. Business as unusual. But maybe it was sort of too. Maybe he had invested so much time in it for it not to be released. But maybe it wasn't to be released. Maybe that's why I keep saying maybe it would have been better if it hadn't been released. If he had just gone to Amarok and then maybe that album had been his next one, I don't know, maybe it had the perception of that would have been different. So maybe he was working on his chops. That's
Yes,
what this
yes,
album is.
yes.
And with someone like him, naturally it's going to lead to some incredible stuff. And as we know also from his really big early works, some stuff stays unreleased and unused. It's not a sign of genius that every note you hit is magic.
Yeah.
I think it's knowing separating the wheat from the chaff.
You see, like the lyrics, Bridge to Paradise, this town is just a fake, a place where you can tell the devil from your brother, right? That is a clear reference, business reference to, like, where in his book he says, I only have lawyers, I don't have friends, I only have lawyers. That's what it refers to for me. And then, like, it's not too late to leave tomorrow, because I know where I'm going. I'm building a bridge to paradise. And I think it's kind of cool to bring Amarok after this.
Yes, this song is the bridge to paradise. From
It's
this album to
ridiculous. And then, like, the like I said, the main theme of Tubular Bells, like the opening section, makes an appearance here. It just repeats over and over at the end, and you have the vocalist, which sounds like also sampled voice, doing this bah, 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 bah kind of thing, which is reminiscent, funny enough to me, of the way that he used the vocals on Platinum, where you have the low male voices doing some goofy stuff. It's a really goofy song.
Yeah.
With an interesting chord progression, with an outrageous guitar solo, with the super cheesy verses. Overall, it's super quirky, and I like it for that. And and this is where Daniel Lazarus is playing the blues harp on Bridge to Paradise. Yeah. And I looked up the background vocalists, and they're all people who have names. Like that, this was also surprising to me. These are not just anybody. It's not just anybody. People who had hits and who were established singers. So, and this is where I'm saying maybe even here he got like somebody involved. I don't know, Maggie Reuter, because he liked her as a folk singer when he was, in his early 70s. He liked her voice, hearing, like, so I think there's like a certain love, to that kind of detail with putting the team together. But then, like I said again, I'm saying it again, the result does not really represent that love for, or that initial,
Yeah.
Anyway, great record somehow. Not so great in many other ways. Released in 1989, the last record of the 80s.
Yeah, and we covered them all if we discount Killing Fields as a regular studio album, although we will definitely do an episode around that one as well.
Yes, and also we need to look at the singles at some point as well. Thank you so much. This was another long episode. And
probably the Amarok one will probably be done in a quarter of an hour then.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay. Thank you so much.
Have a great new year, and see you in 2025.
Yes.